Chapter 13. After lunch, Harry read 2 more chapters of the Mind Magic book and took notes on them before starting the book by the founders. He decided to read the first 2 chapters of each of the books to get a feel for them before deciding what order to read them in, or if he was just going to keep up the same method. Some might be necessary before understanding others after all. The only exception was the 3-volume set, which he would take in order and didn't start the second 2 yet. By the time he finished the first 2 chapters in all those books, it was late enough for him to do his occlumency exercises and then go to bed. The next day went much the same, except that he found it easier to slip into his meditative state, so had time to experiment and see how he wanted to order his memories. The book suggested against chronological given that it would be too easy to follow the threads between the memories. Right now, he had 3 categories: Privet Doctor, Hogwarts, and Future. He decided to use Hogwarts for his mind palace and hide his worst memories in the Chamber of Secrets. The dark stuff he was learning was hidden in the Room of Requirement. If one didn't know what to ask for, nothing would come up. He hadn't decided where to put his future timeline memories, but maybe in another iteration of the Room of Requirement. Memories of classes would be in the appropriate classroom. There was no need to really hide those. By the time he was roused for lunch, Hogwarts was built, and all of his memories were currently swarming the Great Hall. What he had already categorized was still separated over different house tables, but he'd only gotten a few put away already. During and after the Derby delivered lunch, he read the next 2 chapters of Mind Magics before going outside to weed the garden. He would try the active meditation while he was out there and try to get a few more of the memories sorted if he could. Weeding was nice mindless work that would lend itself well to the process. If he could get that figured out, then it would help him manage his time better. He could do the sorting of memories while he worked, and then spend more time reading while he was in his room. Harry was a little nervous about Voldemort coming back. What if he thought that Harry hadn't done enough? What if he thought it wasn't a good job? What if he decided that he wasn't worth the time and stopped teaching him? Instead of fretting over it, he decided to meditate to calm himself down. When he found himself in his mind palace, he decided that he might as well get some more sorting done while he was there. Harry was pulled from his meditation by a flick to his forehead and startled, almost falling out of the chair, and noticed an amused Dark Lord sitting across from him. He shot a half-hearted glare before settling in for the lesson. "Sorry, I must have lost track of time." "You should work on being more aware of your surroundings during your meditations," Tom told him. He'd been there for 10 minutes already and had spent the time looking over Harry's notes and checking how far he'd gotten in the book. "That does take practice, though," he added, not wanting it to seem like a reprimand. "I'll keep that in mind. I tried doing a little bit of meditation while I was weeding the garden, but it was hard to focus," Harry said apologetically. "You will need to know your mind better before it becomes second nature. The sooner you start practicing such things, the easier it will be," Tom told him. He was feeling a little better about the amount of effort the boy was putting into it. While he knew not to take anything Severus said about the boy at face value, he didn't expect the man to be quite that blind about how much discipline Potter had. Harry had a few questions about things that he read in the book, and Tom helped him go over anything that confused him and how to put it into practice. When the testing portion of the lesson started, Harry was surprised at how gentle the intrusion was. He could almost feel the Dark Lord poking around his flimsy barrier, but it wasn't rough or painful. It didn't give him a headache at all. After a few minutes, he felt something that he could only describe as a knock and hesitantly lowered the barrier, letting the man in. He felt the presence settle in his great hall and move around, skirting around the groups of memories before going to the walls and doing the same poking and prodding. Harry guessed that what he was doing now was checking the stability of the illusion, making sure that it wouldn't collapse on itself in an attack. He could tell during that check that it wasn't particularly stable, but it didn't collapse, so that was a good thing at least. When the presence finally withdrew, he looked at the clock and noticed that it had been half an hour that he'd been in there, and Harry put his flimsy barrier back up. "An excellent start," Tom said almost proudly. "Some suggestions, though. You've built Hogwarts from a 2-dimensional point of view. The walls are there, but you didn't take into account the density of the bricks or the thickness of the walls. I dare say it would take very little effort to collapse the entire building. Yeah, you're right. I didn't think of those things until I realized how flimsy it was while you were checking it, Harry admitted, happy enough about the compliment that he could take the criticism better. Good. You can work on that before our next lesson. Now I'm assuming that you weren't intending to leave all your memories cluttered in the hall, yes? No, of course not. I'm still working on getting them where they need to be. I would like to point out, though you haven't gotten to that chapter yet, that they can be hidden in multiple ways. They can be a brick or a desk or even a person, Voldemort told him. Something to keep in mind as you're putting them away. Harry nodded. Now, what sort of organization were you thinking for your memories? Well, I was going to put the memory of the classes in the different classrooms, since they don't really need to be hidden, Harry told him. A good idea. It will also fool anyone looking in your mind into believing that you put very little effort into hiding the memories, and they will expect others to be in such obvious places as well, Tom said with an accepting nod. The memories that I never even want to think of again, I'll put in the Chamber of Secrets. Maybe make them the scales of the basilisk. That way, if anyone wants to see them, they have to fight the basilisk for them, Harry said, as the idea came to his mind after what Tom said about hiding them in other things. An excellent idea, Tom admitted. You should also consider changing the configuration slightly as well, in such a way that it's not completely obvious so an intruder will think they know where they're going, but will lead them to a completely different location. Perhaps the moving staircases have a different pattern or such. Yeah, I could do that, Harry nodded, starting to get a better idea of the possibilities. Or even make secret compartments or hidden passages that aren't in the real Hogwarts. Now you're thinking, Tom said with a smirk. They spent a little longer talking over ideas before Tom left, and Harry made sure all the ideas were written down on a separate parchment that he could burn once he had everything set up, so that no one could find the secrets to his mind in his notes. Harry was glad that Tom seemed to be in a better mood during that lesson, and he wondered if it had anything to do with the proof that Harry wasn't slacking off. Harry was more than glad to find that he could access some early memories of his parents. The one of their deaths was immediately shunted into the chamber with the never want to think about memories. But he had some nice ones too. Mostly with his mother, thankfully, since he basically hated his father by this point. It took him some time before he decided what to do with those and decided to put them in the antechamber next to the great hall. They would be easy to get to that way. The ones of just him and his mother went as paintings on the wall. The ones that included his father were bricks at the bottom of the walls. He would have to concentrate more to get those. Ones with Sirius and Remus were the chairs and tables. Chapter 14. By the next lesson, Harry had shored up his walls, built a few more secret places, and gotten about half of his memories sorted and put in the right place. Once they were where they needed to be, he would start disguising them as other things. He was also getting better at meditation. He still wasn't completely conscious of his surroundings during it, but conscious enough that he noticed when Tom came into the room. The lesson went much the same as the previous one. Rather than just poking at the Hogwarts walls, Tom shoved against them and even battered them, but they held strong. He then wandered through the halls, looking into rooms, and not just the classrooms in use where he knew memories were, but all the other classrooms as well. After a good long perusal, which didn't involve actually viewing any of the memories, he withdrew and gave an honest well done to the boy. He told him that once he was done with the memories, he should start on his library. Once his mind was uncluttered, he should be able to recall any book he'd read, and he could shelve those in the library. Harry thanked him for the idea and decided that his illicit reading could go in the restricted section that would be much more secure than the one at the real Hogwarts. He would never have a real eidetic memory. That was something that had to be born with. He would still have to search for the information, and it wouldn't be instant, but with enough practice it could be almost as good. Tom specified that he meant years of practice for that part, so that they boy wouldn't get discouraged if he couldn't do it for a while. Harry finished organizing his memories and getting his library set up over the weekend, and had started on making them into other things. He started with the easy ones, so he would have the process down when he got to the more dangerous ones. Most of his classes were books on the classroom shelves, except for potions, which were ingredients in the store cupboard, and divination, which were crystal balls. All the classes from the future timeline were in the locked teacher's desk that could only be opened by his own personal password in Parseltongue. Sure, Voldemort could speak it too, but he was from the future also, so it wouldn't be the end of the world if he could get in. The point was to hide the future knowledge from anyone else. That was as far as he got before the next lesson on Monday, and Tom went through with him to look over everything before coming out, and they started talking about traps and obstacles. They included everything from trick steps on the stairs to passwords in every part of the castle, including just getting the stairs to move at all and making their default setting between landings. Some places would have creatures, the basilisk in the chamber, for example. Each of the house common rooms would be guarded by their house animal. Centaurs and hippogriffs could patrol the halls. By Friday, he had gotten that finished, and Voldemort tested it and pronounced it very good. Harry would spend the weekend on stronger barriers, and they talked over ideas for layers and consistencies for the rest of the lesson. Now, Harry, the Animagus potion should be ready by tomorrow, so I will be here an hour early on Monday so that you can take it, and I can walk you through the basic exercises to begin the transformation before we get into occlumency. Awesome. I can't wait, Harry said happily. He and Tom had been getting closer over the almost 2 weeks they'd been working together and could almost be considered friends of a sort. So much so that Harry was usually Harry these days rather than Potter. He had come to realize that Tom wasn't just as good a teacher as McGonagall. He was better than Flitwick, widely regarded as the best teacher at Hogwarts. We will also be working on learning how to show memories that you want to be seen. You will retrieve the memory from its place and put it in the entrance hall to be viewed. You will need to get exceptionally fast at this, particularly when dealing with Dumbledore or Severus. They shouldn't know that you are capable of such advanced occlumency, so it will need to look as if they've succeeded in accessing your mind, but you will be choosing what to show them. We'll talk more on that next week. Harry spent the weekend putting up 3 layers of shields. The outer layer was of the same brick as Hogwarts. The second was overlapping steel plates, and the third was rubber that would bounce out anyone who made it that far. He also had them set to be able to go up or down on a moment's notice, remembering that they were trying to hide that he had shields at all from certain people. Not to mention that if he wanted to show a memory, he would need to bring them down to let someone into his entrance hall. He found that in addition to helping his memory, occlumency also helped him control his emotions better, which was a good thing since he was on the edge of his seat, in excitement waiting for the Animagus potion. Even with that, he was still barely resisting the urge to bounce in his seat when Tom arrived at 7. Harry already knew what would happen when he took it, so there was no need for anything but him snatching it from the Dark Lord's hand and downing it as soon as he came in. Tom saw the animal Harry turned into and was torn between laughing and pinching his nose in exasperation. Instead, he did neither and just conjured a mirror for the little demon to see himself. Once he stopped running around the room, that was. Thankfully, even the excitable animal was smart enough not to climb on the Dark Lord like he was the furniture, curtains, and walls. He waited until there were only 10 minutes left of the 20 that he would be transformed for, and sent a light, stinging hex to get his attention and get him off the curtain. He needed to be able to get a good look at himself from multiple angles if he was going to transform on his own. Harry ran over to the mirror and was tempted to pout when he saw what he was, but knew he didn't have time for that, so he studied what he looked like from every angle. The messy fur was apparently like his hair, and his eyes were a bright green like his human form. It looked almost eerie in this form, though. No, almost about it. Definitely eerie. He had just finished studying his tail when he felt the tingling that meant that he was transforming back, and he stepped back into the empty space so he didn't break anything. "I'm a ferret," he said with a huff. "No, you're not," Tom said with a sigh. "I'm not," Harry asked hopefully. "I don't know why I'm surprised," Tom muttered to himself before saying to Harry, "You are a mongoose, a white-tailed mongoose to be exact." "Oh," Harry said, trying to remember anything he'd read about mongoose before, and then he burst into laughter. Leave it to him to be the mortal enemy of all snakes. From what he'd read, a mongoose could even kill a king cobra easily. That was so much cooler than ferret. "Hey, once I can transform, will you go snake and let me practice hypnotizing you?" he half-joked. "Absolutely not," Tom said, scandalized. "I will consider providing you other snakes to practice with, however." The fact that one of them would not be Nagini, he was sure was obvious as well. The next few minutes were spent going through the steps that Harry would have to practice on his own in order to transform before they got into occlumency. There weren't a lot of questions that Harry had at this stage, since he had everything all set up, so they got right into it. Harry would bring memories for Tom to view into the entrance hall, and they practiced speed. Among other things, Harry showed him his previous occlumency lessons with Snape and his first potions class, his first Quidditch game, getting his Hogwarts letter, getting his wand and the conversation that followed, and even a few of Snape's memories, including the one where he made the vow to protect Harry. He wanted Tom to understand why Snape could never truly be on his side until Harry could come out, as it were. He knew the man well enough by now to know that he wouldn't kill Snape for it. "Thank you for that last memory, Harry," Tom even told him. "It helps me to understand what buttons I should not push and where his lines are." He would take great care to ask nothing regarding Harry of Snape, no matter how benign, lest his paranoia see a threat and his vow trigger. He did not trust the potion master enough to let him in on the secret of Harry being on his side. He didn't trust anyone enough for that. Harry was his secret weapon. And a very sharp one he was turning out to be as well. Between now and the next lesson, practice bringing them out and putting them back with more speed. Once you've got that, we'll work on recognizing the correct memory based on verbal clues. With luck, we'll be able to get as far as falsifying memories before your birthday in 3 weeks. Chapter 15. In between teaching Harry, Tom was quite busy himself. He'd purchased an old Muggle warehouse and warded it to the gills before setting it up for his people to practice dueling and martial arts. He built a gym in his manor, under a second Fidelis, where he could get himself back into shape. He wasn't about to join the masses in such things and risk them seeing any weakness from him. He'd also gotten the mind healer interviewed and invited into the primary Fidelis to work with Barty. In addition to all the practical things, he also had the reports from his people to go over, researching the Dementors and trying to find a way to destroy them, planning the Azkaban breakout, researching the prophecy to make sure he didn't miss anything crucial, organizing his memories of the last 2 years, and creating a chart of what definitely had to happen, what should probably happen to be on the safe side, and what could be disregarded. Then there was the slow-going plans for after Dumbledore's death and ways in which he could advance his plans, albeit slowly, in the meantime. The rare times he managed to eat it was in the library or his office, and he often slept there too. By the time Harry's birthday came around, Tom was caught up on everything except the Dementor research. He had a plan for Azkaban, but didn't want to put it into effect until he could deal with the Dementors. Last time around, he hadn't hit Azkaban until Yule, so as long as he had something by then, it would be good enough. And if he didn't have anything by then, he would just make them promises that he wouldn't keep. Also in that time, Harry had perfected his occlumency and even going so far as creating false memories, even if it was currently no more than just melding the last timeline and this one. It would take a lot longer before he could make a true false memory. Most of their lessons were now just talking over things from the other books, as Harry learned more about the nature of magic and how it functioned. It was the day after Harry's birthday, and one day before the Dementor incident when they had what they assumed would be their last in-person lesson of the summer. Since Harry was still being dragged in the papers for his support of Dumbledore, there was no reason why it wouldn't be the same as last time. Harry had been hoping to get his animagus form down by then, but he still wasn't there yet. He was close, very close, but couldn't quite get the last bit. During the lesson, Tom gave him some tips to get him the last of the way, gave him one more heavy test of his occlumency with the information that it could help mitigate the effects of the Dementors, and then spent the last half of the lesson in a discussion of why the different magical rites for different months of the moons. Before Tom left, he asked, "Is there any other spell you'd like to get done here before I put the trace back on your wand?" "Actually, yeah," Harry said, with a grateful smile. Not long after he realized that he really could use magic, he had liberated his trunk from the cupboard under the stairs, so he had everything in his room for the packing spell he intoned. Tom had brought him a moleskin pouch for his birthday at their last lesson so that he could keep his other books hidden, and he packed them inside just before Tom arrived, so they were now in the trunk as well. After that, He went around using finite on everything, and his nice, comfortable furniture was now back to the ratty, falling-apart stuff he'd been using before. He used a disillusionment spell to sneak downstairs and cancel the compulsion charm on his relatives, and then came back up. Should I go ahead and take down the privacy spells, or— No, I will do that as I leave. It will take me a few minutes to reapply the trace, Tom told him, holding out his hand for the wand. Harry didn't even hesitate before handing it to him, something that would have blown his mind less than 2 months ago, and Tom waved his own wand over it, incanting a long string of spells. Putting it on was much more complicated than taking it off, especially since he was trying to hide that it had ever been off, so making the spells look much older than they were, and hide his own magical signature. It took almost 20 minutes before he was done and handing the wand back. Now, I'm unsure whether the wards where you are going will stop my elf from bringing you letters, but they shouldn't be able to stop your elf, so you will simply have to instruct him to take orders from me regarding that subject and answer my call. I can do that. But just for the letters, Harry agreed. He wasn't going to give Tom total control over Darby, and you aren't to punish him for any reason. Agreed. On the off chance he does something to warrant punishment, I will simply advise you of the offense, and it will be your decision how to handle it. As it should be, Tom nodded. Punishing someone else's elf was even worse than punishing someone else's children. On another note, I have found someone to continue your lessons at Hogwarts. Okay, Harry said nervously, waiting for the axe to fall. He knew that he would have no say over who it was, and was afraid that it would be someone like Malfoy. I did take into account your difficulties and the part that you had to play, and immediately eliminated any Slytherins. It would be too suspicious for you to sneak around to see them. Surprisingly enough, I managed to find a Gryffindor, and a female who is willing to pretend to be your girlfriend as a cover for this school year. She is not aware that the request is coming from me or of our involvement at all. She is the daughter of one of my followers' wife's second cousin. Okay, that sounds cool. Who is she? Her name is Catherine Bell, and she is a 6th year this year, meaning she doesn't have to worry about Newt studying and can spend as much time as you need. Oh yeah, I know Katie. She's on the Quidditch team with me. That'll make it more believable, Harry said, relieved. Good, I'm glad to hear it, Tom nodded. Her family has always been neutral, but follow the old ways. Granted, she won't be able to help you with your family-specific lessons, but once the old man is dead, you can get to Gringotts, and I'm sure your grandfather left a journal on such things in the family vault. I hope so, Harry said hopefully. He'd read enough about family magics to want desperately to learn his. He should have been training in them for years already. Then I shall take my leave. The Parseltongue password on my letters will be Revolution. I'll use the same password then, Harry agreed. He was glad that Tom had taught him that spell already. It was probably overkill since he would be sending his letters with Darby as soon as they were written, but better safe than sorry. Good luck. Harry, don't screw up, he said as he waved his wand, removing the privacy spells and immediately turning into his animagus form. Harry had Darby pop him outside the wards since he'd removed the compulsion on his relatives, so they wouldn't ignore the snake this time. The next day, everything happened as he remembered it, right down to the stream of letters and his relatives throwing a fit over Dudley's state. Harry hadn't even considered delaying long enough for Dudley to be kissed. This had been the event that had at least started to turn his life around. Harry hoped that it would work this time, and that the slight improvement he saw would continue after the timeline caught back up. The Dursleys were still at the hospital with poor Dudley long after dark, when he was roused from his sleep by the sound of the Order members downstairs coming to get him. He let himself be introduced to the new members and avoided being told off for putting his wand in his pocket as they got ready to go. Harry definitely wasn't looking forward to the long flight in the middle of the night. Even this time of year, that high up and moving at those speeds, it was freezing, and he was tired. He knew better than to argue, though. He just had to go along with it, freaking Dumbledore and his idiocy. Like it really would have been so much worse to just have someone side-along apparate him rather than flying all over creation where anyone could shoot them down.